What Tanya does so well is she can step back from the coal face and she can bring her human elements to bear on whatever it is you're talking about. And she thinks about how they can make the skills of an engineer appropriate to solving some of the world's really intractable problems that are outside of the engineering box. And that is something that Tanya brings to the table and does without even realizing she's doing it. Of course, she's a brilliant engineer. And there are very few engineers who actually can think strategically. I've known Tanya for an awfully long time, and goodness, it has been such a pleasure as well.
We met back in 2015 on the No. 1 Court project, which I was brought in to be a part of. The original bowl was retained. We took off the old 1990s flat roof. We put on an incredibly complicated, intricate steel structure. However, Tanya's remit was to then make 7,000 additional tons of moving roof work with that structure. So in terms of structural engineering, the dynamic loads and how the whole thing works, the mind-boggling mathematical calculations that make the whole system work, means that you have to have incredibly talented engineers leading the teams in order to make that a success. And they were all incredibly enthusiastic, both for the project, but also, in fairness, to be working within Tanya's group.
I've worked for Tanya for over 15 years, and I've always been incredibly impressed by her unique combination of creativity, curiosity, and I think what underpins everything about her is really this idea of her courage. She always continues to move on and take on the next challenge. And I think at this moment in time where engineers are being looked to more and more in the world to help come up with the solutions that we need, and I think there's no better example than Tanya at the lead of this incredible organization of engineers and making sure that it is a society of problem solvers, that we're just solving those problems with compassion, with equity, and with incredible competence, and with courage.
Tanya's a really, really good engineer. She's a fantastic engineer, fantastic businesswoman. I think a president needs to enthuse people about structural engineering. They need to be passionate about structural engineering, but it's really about having a message, having something to say, something to bring to the profession, which is so important. She has a superb career behind her, and she brings a massive passion for engineering and for diversity and for mentoring, and she'll be a great president.
I'd say she's circumnavigated the world structurally. I think she moved on to Perth, then to London, and now she's doing fantastic things in New York, and she'll be doing great things for FIstructE and for structural engineers for many years to come. I'm sure she's going to be leading the institution with great vigour and lots of great ideas.
I've worked with Tanya on 5+ projects, and one of the things that I really enjoy about Tanya is the energy and intensity that she brings to her work regardless of scale. I think her foremost quality as a leader, well, let's say 2 qualities. Number 1 would be her attention to detail and thoroughness, and number 2 would be her optimism and her ability to rally the team together around the important issues at hand. She's a socially minded, environmentally minded, people-minded engineer, but it is really special to get to work with somebody like Tanya who can connect the dots between how something is engineered and how something is used and how it impacts people's lives.
She's actually really kind. She really cares about the people that she works with, and she cares about their well-being. Her infectious passion is something that everybody's going to be attracted to. She's got really good, well-thought-through ideas, a good strategy on the direction of travel, and the fact that she's such a firm believer in it, people just want to be a part of that.
It's absolutely wonderful to see so many people here tonight, both in person and also online. And I know many of you have travelled quite a long way to be here tonight, as well as joining globally at all sorts of different times around the world. It genuinely means so much to me that you're here. I also know that some of you are not structural engineers. In fact, I think about a quarter of the audience tonight is from outside the structural engineering profession, which is incredible. And to me, this just shows how much support we have from our wider built environment community for our profession. And I think this is so essential for our success. So our opening video is incredibly humbling. In fact, I almost feel like I don't have to do anything else. My colleagues did it for me, and I want to start by thanking them for their contributions. But I think more importantly than that, for me, it reflects what's just so important to me about my career and about our profession, which are the genuine friendships and the enjoyment that comes from working together over so many years. And this idea of community and collaboration is at the center of my address tonight, because I think it supercharges the impact we can have as engineers alone. As structural engineers, we have a unique opportunity to apply our skills to address climate change with urgency, to enhance public safety, and to foster a more equitable society. This is engineering with purpose. Engineering with purpose is both an individual commitment and a collaborative industry endeavour. As structural engineers, we're experts in the design, the construction, and the preservation of structures. No one knows structures better than we do. And so I think that this is our highest point of impact on the world. However, if we're to achieve this, we have to harness our individual capabilities, but then leverage our professional knowledge and our community, and collaborate beyond the boundaries of structural engineering in order to effect global scale positive change. It's our time to step up and have the courage to change the things we can. And so tonight I'll speak to three themes: technical expertise, which I think is our individual capabilities to really make a difference, collaboration and knowledge sharing, and aligned action. And I thought a lot about, I probably thought too long actually, about what did I want to speak about this evening. And I've chosen these three themes because I think they've been most instrumental in shaping my own career. But more importantly than that, I think they're the areas that we must focus on for the future of our profession. So I've chosen a few examples from my own life and my own work just to bring a bit of tangibility and some meaning to these three themes. And I'm going to conclude with a collective call to action, urging each one of you, not just engineers, but each one of you to commit to a specific goal in 2024. And the purpose of this is to create aligned action towards positive change in our industry. So why are we all here today? Why do we have a packed house and hundreds of people online? I believe it's because we share a passion for our profession. As engineers, we're proud of the purpose of engineering in the world in keeping us safe by creating structures that ensure everyone can survive and, most importantly, thrive. Each one of us has immense personal power to really make a difference in the world using our professional skills. When our expertise is propelled by the things we care deeply about, we bring purpose to our work, and most often, this increases the impact we can have. Personally, I get excited by great design. I love uplifting spaces that are created and framed by structures. And I've chosen a few on the screen tonight, inspiration of other people's work. I especially love when you can see the craftsmanship, the skill, and the engineering brilliance. But particularly important to me is where these buildings have a tangible, purposeful function, such as bringing people together. This is the essence of buildings and architecture that inspires, but most importantly, it fuels me. And at the same time, I care about the impact that I have on the environment. So I wanted to start by sharing one example of what happens when we can align our personal passion with our professional skills. So most of you in the room will already know that an individual annual carbon footprint is in the order of 10 to 15 tons. Mine is a little bit higher. I've looked at my lifestyle and where I can make changes, and the best that I think I can do in the next 12 months is to reduce my individual annual carbon footprint by 5 tons. That's the 5 tons you see on the screen there. I looked at the impact that I was able to have as a designer in the last 12 months on the projects I've been working on, and then projecting the current projects I have in the next 12 months. And I've been able to reduce the carbon footprint of those projects by about 5,000 tons. This is 1,000 tons more powerful than what I can do as an individual in my own life. If I look at the privilege I have standing here as an industry leader and the impact I can have throughout my company, I think that in the next 12 months, that can be closer to 50,000 tons. And the point that I really want to make here is that if we want to make a difference in the world, one of the most powerful and impactful ways we can do that is using our professional skills. So if I did this alone, it's a drop in the ocean. But if all of us together within the industry magnify our impact through collaboration and aligned action, we can really start to make a difference in this moment, in the next 12 months. And I know that all of you care about your own impact on the environment in some way. So let's look at the potential effect we could potentially have in the next 12 months together. If every single person in this room and online today reduced their professional carbon footprint by 10%, we could potentially save 100,000 tons of embodied carbon. This is equivalent to an annual carbon footprint of 10,000 people. Yep, just make sure I'm not out by a magnitude of 10. If every active member of FIstructE was able to reduce their professional carbon footprint by 10%, we could save 1 million tons. So before we get hung up on the numbers, we've based this on roughly a magnitude of impacting what you can do professionally by a factor of 10 to 100. But the point I want to make is that we need to act now, we need to act together, and if we all take a small, achievable step, we can actually make a huge difference right in this moment. So we can see the impact of this scaled action, and most of us know this already. I believe we're at a point of greater need and urgency in the world, and we need more engineers. We need more engineers to do what we can with what we have to address the rapidly changing environment and a future climate disaster. We need more clever people to become even more purpose-driven in order to solve some of the biggest challenges in front of us. We're moving a little bit too slowly. We're in the right direction, but I believe we need to step up and accelerate our actions. We were established to uphold public safety. A few years ago, we elevated environment to be on par with public safety. We know we can make a difference in the world because currently the buildings and construction sector contributes 37% to greenhouse gas emissions. But I don't want to focus on the negative. We're moving to net zero and regenerative design. I believe we just need more people to move in the same direction together right now to achieve that more rapidly. And to do that, we need people from all backgrounds. We need more engineers to elevate their competence in order to make a difference now. So there's urgency behind this. My vision for the future of our industry is to help empower members to reduce embodied carbon, regardless of sector, regardless of seniority, for a more sustainable world. I want to evolve and empower members to be more effective engineers, increase level of competence, for a safer world. And finally, I want to attract, retain, and empower more engineers overall to feel like valued members of our profession, breaking down barriers for a more inclusive world. And to be future ready, these are some of the actions we need to take together in 2024 in order to initiate incremental positive change. So, why am I talking about the importance of personal passion and values in the context of engineering and climate change? It's because I've come to learn that who we are forms our values and what we care about, which is the basis for who we are as engineers. And who we are as engineers is the mechanism for the power we have to impact the world for good. So a little bit about me. I was born in Los Angeles in the United States. I grew up in Australia, in case you can't quite pick the accent. I spent 20 years of my adult life in London and the last 5 in New York. And about 5 years ago, I started to realize that at the end of my career, I wanted to be able to walk away feeling like I'd used all the benefits I'd been given through a great start in life and the privilege of being an engineer to make an intentional positive difference. Given that I'm Australian, I couldn't go past having a kangaroo shot. I grew up in Australia with an amazing family at a time and in a culture that was warm, outdoorsy. I grew up walking in the bush, swimming in the ocean, and playing loads of sport. I had access to good quality, free education and healthcare, and I was surrounded by a community of creative and academic people who'd all traveled the world. And so this formed my worldview and my value system. So without realizing it, I've come full circle, and these values of preserving the planet, creating a built environment that keeps everyone safe and creates uplifting spaces for people to exist, survive, and thrive, are where I've invested my career. Today, I focus on working with people and finding projects where these are shared values. Who I am shapes my values and my contribution through engineering towards people and planet. So, to complement my Australian upbringing and undergraduate education, after I became chartered in Australia, I moved to London. And so far, this has had the most profound impact on who I am and how I've developed as an engineer. And like many of you, the reason for this is that I was, and I'm still, in awe and inspired by the beauty and the technical skill and the gravitas of some of the greatest engineering achievements throughout history that we can still see, touch, and reference today. So these are the basis for my engineering inspiration, and as I said, I'm sure they are for many of you as well. I started to see common threads in the types of places and buildings that I wanted to visit, the scale, form, quality of space, but also the beauty and the delight that can be created by buildings and structure. And you may not be surprised to know that I guess overarching all of these qualities, in each one of these examples, there's purpose and function to each of these buildings and structures. So I wanted to share a couple of projects from the early days when I first moved to London. Like many of you, I've had the opportunity to work on a diverse range of structures. I started out in Australia working on bridge design and some elemental design of tall buildings in the Middle East. And then I moved to London with just a few years of design experience, and I was lucky enough, or maybe drawn to, long-span design of buildings. I was absolutely thrilled to work on these types of projects. I felt like I could point to them on TV, I could call up my mum and dad and talk about these really big stadia I was working on. I remember very early on when, I was quite young, I'd go back to Australia and talk about how I was a stadium designer. And, you know, for a while it was all about the scale and the technical complexity and developing my craft in that sense. But when I look back in hindsight, I think, yes, scale, express structure were very important to me, but I can also see that there's a common thread of community and sports projects. I think that people element of engineering in terms of how these buildings bring people together has always been there, and I've always been drawn to it. But lately, it's definitely been a lot more intentional. So, moving to technical competence, to arrive at a place where I could competently contribute to the design and analysis of the types of buildings and structures that I wanted to be involved with, the single most impactful point in my career that accelerated my understanding of structural engineering was studying for the FIstructE membership exam. And I want to take a moment to say this isn't the only way to be competent. I know there are many other routes within FIstructE and in the profession. This was the one that was most impactful for me. And it's the reason I'm so passionate about the value and the importance of high standards of engineering that are demanded and achieved through the exam. On the other side of this milestone, I had greater awareness of how much I didn't know. And this is the piece that I talk about here on the slide where I talk about humility. Because I think understanding that we know a lot, but there's so much that we don't know, but that understanding how to access that knowledge, the importance of strong mentors, and the importance of continuing to practice as we continue to evolve as engineers. And I believe if we're to innovate and accelerate solutions to address climate change, this balanced approach of a high level of technical competence as well as access to knowledge is essential for us to progress. So this mindset set a future path for me to work on all types of buildings, these large scales that I'd been inspired of traveling throughout Europe when I first moved to London, as well as historic buildings that I was in awe of. And ultimately, it created a passport to working all over the world. And more recently, it served me incredibly well in innovation in low carbon design. So I created this graph. I actually came across this graph and I thought, this is exactly what was in my head. And I passed it by a few people and everyone's like, no, I don't understand it. So I'm hoping that because I'm with my people, it doesn't need explanation. But what I really want to say is that if you've been around for a while like I have, life isn't linear. You think you're on a path and then something happens. A little bit, this is akin a little bit to technical competence, where you start out at the beginning and I studied for this exam. I reached this really high level of base technical competence. I felt amazing. I felt like I could do anything. I knew that I didn't know everything, but I felt pretty good about things, and that's that white line, that competence threshold there. But I guess what I didn't know until later on through my career is that the dips come from things that you maybe can control in life and some that you can't. And the value of lifelong learning is something that I think is essential for all of us. So for me, some of those dips might be things like working in different countries or different cultures or with different codes. But I also believe that it's things like rapidly changing materials for us to accelerate climate action, understanding with safety how we can innovate, what we can do to reduce our embodied carbon. It's also rapidly changing technology. So one of the things for me at the same time as learning new approaches to lower carbon design, because I started out thinking, well, it's timber and then it's cement replacement, and it is those things, but it's a lot more. I've also needed to create the time to understand how emerging technology can meaningfully inform and accelerate my work. And so I think this lifelong learning is essential for all of us, not just from a technical perspective, but because the world is rapidly changing around us and we need to move with it. Already, we've witnessed the acceleration of embodied carbon quantification, knowledge management, design ideation, and business processes, all accelerated through artificial intelligence and machine learning. And so it's critical that we embrace these tools as part of the evolution of our profession, which means that learning, support, and knowledge sharing outside our immediate colleagues and often outside our companies is going to be essential to our success. And this commitment to lifelong learning is something that I guess in my career I saw as CPD, which didn't sound exciting, but when I think about things like how am I going to survive as an engineer with artificial intelligence, how can that make me a better designer, more competent, suddenly for me it becomes a lot more exciting. So this year I'm focused on emphasizing mentoring as knowledge exchange, which means it's not limited to an older person imparting wisdom on a younger person. And here we have Neve Campbell, who, when I've been learning a lot more about embodied carbon in terms of how to integrate it into my designs, it's always younger people that I'm reaching out to help me develop that skill. I think the same is true of regenerative design and digital acceleration as well. So mentoring to me means knowledge exchange in its most broad sense. I also don't think that mentoring needs to be limited to technical knowledge, but also the process and, to me, the human element of engineering. This is the most important support. This is most important for us to support, but to empower and retain engineers. And lastly, I don't think it needs to be limited to knowledge exchange purely within the engineering discipline. And in fact, it shouldn't be. If we're going to evolve as engineers at pace, we need to draw on the skills and the expertise of everybody within the built environment. So these are my thoughts on the importance of knowledge sharing and mentoring. Let's hear from a few other people in our community on their understanding.
Tanya's been amazing, and I've had the personal benefit of being coached and mentored by her. And it was by going through the experience, reflecting on what good leadership is, and also how you can support others achieve their value. I've also had the benefit of reverse mentoring, where younger people have helped me realise about my strengths and the value that I add to the profession.
I think Tanya is a natural mentor. Good mentor is someone who has experience, is willing to share that experience, who is a good listener, and to bring to bear their own experiences to make that person then go out into the big wide world a stronger and better person to do what they want to achieve.
I think that's the really exciting thing about our discipline, that mentoring is not just about hearing from people who are perhaps more experienced or greater amount of runs on the board. It comes from all levels. So I work with young PhD students every day of my life, and learning things every day. I think that's really an exciting part of our profession, that one can achieve mentoring through all of those different roles that we play.
Well, mentoring is vitally important, and it's not just that very early stage mentoring that we all think of. You're never too old, you're never too young, you're never too experienced to both mentor someone else and indeed get mentoring. We need to stop and look back on our own careers and say how many people helped us to get to where we are now, and then make sure that we're doing at least that to help other people. So it's vital. We all need to give more time for mentoring.
So, as I reflect on my own journey, I've witnessed the transformation that technical excellence and continuous learning can bring. But beyond the boundaries of a single business or practice, seeking out knowledge and support through our built environment community has helped me evolve both technically as a design leader, as a business leader, and an industry advocate. And I know many of you in this room today are the people that are responsible for mentoring and sharing knowledge and sharing support, and many of you are the reason that I'm up here. So collaboration is essential because it magnifies our ability to be effective and impactful. And I've experienced so often overcoming knowledge barriers and feeling supported from our broader built environment community. So we've explored collaboration in the context of knowledge exchange between individuals and specific to technical competence. Now I want to share a couple of project examples where I think collaboration has been one of the primary reasons these projects have been successful. So I'm going to start with the Wimbledon No. 1 Court project, which you saw Patrick share some of at the beginning of the opening video. And this project will always be special to me. As a special treat, occasionally I was able to stay up late and watch Wimbledon on TV as a kid. And I think it's one of the highlight projects for me in its overlap of aligning personal interest and professional skills and expertise. I also think it was so technically challenging that it will definitely be one of the highlights of my own career. But beyond that, I think it's really interesting to look back on some of those early projects, those long span projects that I shared with you, and now to see the progression from where I was motivated purely by their scale, their gravitas, and I guess the technical challenges, through to this alignment and how I'm fueled and motivated both by people and the technical challenges that come from these large-scale projects. So just to give you a little bit of background or overview on the project, it was an existing concrete bowl, and the project involved retention and reuse of the existing bowl with additional foundations and vertical structure that were integrated in order to support a new static and moving roof. So it was an incredibly complex project. I don't want anyone to walk away thinking this is an embodied carbon talk, but just sort of an interest, I guess, since this is an engineering talk, is that some of the, just in it being able to strengthen the existing structure, we saved about 9,000 tonnes of embodied carbon on this project. Also, just a little side note, because I think what motivates me about engineering is how interesting it is. I love the fact that much of the height of the building and the size of the aperture was all driven around each blade of grass getting enough sunlight in winter to survive. And I love that engineering is just one piece of a much broader story. So, little side note just to share with everyone there, because I think it'll stick with me forever. So, this is a slide that I took from my client and friend Patrick that he used in one of his talks to describe the complexity of his side on the client side for the project. But what came to me, and the reason that I chose it, is that when I started out in Stadia Design, it was very much a single architect or a single engineer taking credit for the entire design. And whilst ultimately somebody has to and should take responsibility, my experience is that success comes from 1,000 different people bringing their expertise all at once to a project. And so one of the biggest lessons that I've learned on this project is how fast-track, high-profile sports projects in particular bring everyone together to collaborate in a way where we have a common goal. There is an absolute deadline that has to be met. And that collaboration is essential, and it's the thing that helps everyone get a lot done in a very short period of time. In this project in particular, we also lent very heavily on the engineering community. The engineers that had designed Centre Court had invested a lot of time into research and development and the design of Centre Court that we were then able to leverage for our success. So I think collaboration will mean different things to different people. The essence of it is to respect and access the broader knowledge that's available in order to supercharge our capabilities to accelerate our evolution as a profession. So pivoting now to the Sugar Quays project in London, now known as Landmark Place, which is a high-end residential development on the River Thames, adjacent to the Tower of London. And this project is a great example of different firms working together, traditionally competitors, to achieve the best outcome for the project. And I've chosen this project because I also think it's interesting, but I think as we move forward as a profession, if we're going to be able to preserve all or parts of existing buildings in order to accelerate climate change, then collaboration and bringing in people that have knowledge that we don't have to complement ours is essential. And in this example, we weren't able to retain the existing building on site, which was a 1970s concrete building, but we were able to retain the existing piled foundations and supplement them with new ones. Again, more for interest's sake, one of the things I absolutely love about working in London is the history of the sites. And on this one, you can see the archaeological map. It had I think 50% of the site between existing piles and archaeology was taken up, dating right back to Roman ruins. In being able to reuse the existing foundations, again, a side note, but I think very interesting, we were able to reduce the embodied carbon of the project by about 15%. So, as well as sort of the future of partnerships, I guess, one of the other things just to impress upon people here is the reason that this partnership was so successful is because we had existing data from the site. And we need to reduce risk, particularly as we move forward and preserve buildings and we innovate. And one of the ways to do that is to have good, solid data that we can rely on in order to base our decisions. And the reason this project was successful was the collaboration, the data, and the deep expertise that everyone brought together. So, lastly, I want to broaden our thoughts about collaboration, not just between the engineering community, but wider into leveraging our whole built environment community. This project is in construction. It's the Shirley Chisholm Recreation Centre in Brooklyn, in New York. And another interesting fact, for me at least, hopefully for you, is that this recreation centre will serve a community or a catchment area of 40,000 people. And so when I talked before about being driven by shared values of serving people and planet, I feel like this is one of the projects that, you know, I've worked towards and feel really proud to be part of for that reason. So a little insight. One of the drivers was low carbon design, and so of course we started out with an entire mass timber superstructure and high cement replacement in the substructure. Unfortunately, the timber didn't work out from a time but a scheduling perspective, and we were able to retain it for the feature indoor swimming pool portion of the building. In order to make that work, we had to leverage all of the expertise within my company, but also all of the expertise within the wider engineering and built environment community in order to detail, design, and ensure that the function of timber in a humid and corrosive environment was appropriate and was going to be successful. And the only way we could do that was to dig into research and some of the failures from previous timber designs in buildings, accessing cross reports, doing anything we could to find out, you know, what were the things that other people had learned that we could dig into in order to make this project successful. And that collaboration meant that this project would not be a timber building if it hadn't been for that wider engineering community. But the last point on this that I want to make is that it would be really nice if we could jump from 37% contribution to greenhouse gases to net zero tomorrow. We're not at that place right now, but we can make change in small, incremental, and feasible ways. And in accessing both the architects and the contractor on this project, who also had aligned values of digging into social equity, we were able to start looking at the supply chain for this project and understanding what's required in order to eliminate forced labour in the supply chain, as well as unethical construction practices. And it's just a small step in this process, but without that alignment and that passion from everyone to bring social equity into our projects and design for the benefit of people, we wouldn't be on this path together. And so I'd like to encourage all of us to think bigger and broader about our role and about the importance of collaboration with engineering and within engineering in the built environment. It can't be overstated. As structural engineers, we're an integral piece of a larger puzzle, and we know this. And our ability to access and apply knowledge and support of others is significantly enhanced when we collaborate. I believe that the future of engineering hinges on our commitment to supporting engineers through their careers, supporting the environment and society, and engaging with the wider built environment community to tackle urgent issues and to advance our profession. So, my actions alone are a drop in the ocean. It's absolutely crucial that we move together in the same direction at the same time. And I hope that that slide at the beginning, the small steps, kind of just showed you the potential impact in a very short space of time if we all take those realistic steps together. They could be increasing knowledge, increasing skills, or increasing experience in order to innovate. But they need to be driven by our own personal motivation and passion and supported by our community. Together, I believe we can create meaningful, immediate positive change. So, where do I want to see change for our profession and by our profession in 2024? I want to see less carbon in the environment, accelerating our path to net positive zero and improving our impact on the planet. I want to see a safer and uplifting built environment, and more engineers at every age inspired and engaged actively to contribute to these goals. When we move together for the benefit of people and our planet, this is our purpose. So wrapping up, for the benefit of planet, my vision is that I want to see everyone who wants to become an engineer feel supported to evolve in our profession and be able to do so. And I want to ensure that both technical and professional support is available to all, so that everyone can contribute using their skills for the benefit of society. So I promised you a call to action, and to achieve this, I've chosen 3 actions that you can choose any of in order to enact change in 2024. The first is that I commit to championing inclusivity by mentoring or supporting at least one person towards mentorship or fellowship in 2024. And I want to stress that these aren't just for engineers, this is everyone in our built environment community, because we need everyone in order to be successful. So the first is mentoring. The second is I commit to actively sharing our knowledge and collaborating with others to accelerate technical expertise within our wider engineering community. And lastly, I commit to addressing societal challenges through my practice by focusing on improved structural safety, increased resilience, or other impactful solutions in 2024. So, if you feel more compelled by serving the planet, I think, for the benefit of planet, we need new and refreshed skills and knowledge in order to achieve the environmental goals that we know are ahead of us. And so my call to action is to commit to upskilling where necessary in order to reduce carbon and sharing knowledge. So I've chosen 3 actions that anyone can take. You don't need to take all 3, just pick one, in order to achieve this. The first is, I commit to safely reducing embodied carbon compared to my previous projects by 10% in 2024. I commit to enhancing my engineering competence by completing advanced training sessions or workshops in 2024. And lastly, I commit to engaging with at least 20 members of the built environment to have a collective positive action on sustainability in 2024. So I wanted to be inclusive, and so I've created these 6 actions that I believe together will help accelerate positive change in the next 12 months. And I say the next 12 months not just because I'm only president for 12 months, but because I believe we need to accelerate our actions. So I'd like to start by asking each of you to support this initiative by choosing one. And we're off to a running start with many of you here today and within our profession already stepping up to commit to this aligned action. Thank you.